Ladies and gentlemen, a new Wuthering Waves patch is upon us, version 2.8. And what that means is that a new character has released as well. And with the release of a new character, that means updates to the Prydwen tier list. And I've already gotten a bit of a short preview for where some of the newer characters are placed. And I gotta say, boy, oh boy, is this going to be quite a discussion, because I think that there's a lot going on with Chisa, a lot that's going on sort of like behind the scenes, and I want to talk a bit about the crazy results that we're going to be seeing for this 2.8 patch. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive right on into the changelog. First things first, we're going to start it off with the ToA, then look at Wuthering Waves, so on and so forth. All right, ToA changes. Chisa is added as a tier 1 without her signature, and a tier 0.5 with her signature, as well as the partner tag. So let me just be upfront about what these sort of significations actually mean. This means that she's one of the least valuable characters in the game, at least in the present. Yes, she's probably one of the furthest units from a must pull, simply given the fact that a lot of the characters that I do believe she's intended to work with, they're just not really in the game yet. And even in the one team where she does have a good level of performance, she's competing with a free unit. So that's just some of the context up front. Let's go ahead and dive into some of Prydwen's specific reasoning over here. And I'll provide some of the documentation from in-game, talk a little bit about her kit to explain why this placement is where it is. Because I agree with this. Yes, I agree with this. After my testing and seeing what Chisa's capable of, I agree with this placement. So, despite what her tier list placements might say, Chisa is in a rather difficult spot in the current meta, because she only works with negative status characters, that's the key word, and is only worth using over pre-existing options with her signature weapon in a single team. Kartithia with Chikona. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is a character that only works with negative status teams, but in 2 of the 3 negative status teams, she's worse than Shorekeeper, or she's worse than Spectro Rover. Yes. So let me show you what exactly I'm talking about over here. So this is the one team in the game where she actually can have a high level of performance. But for her to exceed the performance of Arrow Rover, the free unit with their signature, you know, Blood Pack's Pledge, she needs to have her own sig or have S2. Otherwise, Arrow Rover is actually going to be a better support. Unfortunate. The other situation is that when you have Chisa and you use her, and like I said before, another negative status team, she's worse than Shorekeeper and Rover. And then in this team with Phoebe and Rover, she's worse than Shorekeeper. So that's the unfortunate rough placement of this character in the current meta. And that's why she has the partner tag. She's worse than other options in other negative status teams and only replaces Arrow Rover. However, the two are still in the same tier on our tier list. Why? Because Arrow Rover was already meant to complete Kartithia's team. Sure, Kartithia is the current best Tower of Adversity DPS in the game, and Chisa only adds to that, which is why she places in tier 1 by default. Believe me when I say this, if Chisa was not somebody that worked somewhat well with Kartithia and Chikona, she would have 0 teams in the game. Literally 0 teams, and she might even be like a tier 2 or tier 3 unit. Think like literally on the same level as like a fucking Ling Yang or a Calcharo. That's how bad she would be. However, she adds on to an already completed team, and that leads to a very marginal increase in team performance, because that's the case, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said before, in that one Kartithia Chikona team over here, right? You already have Arrow Rover, who once again is a free unit and provides, let's just say, they're the 100% DPS. Chisa with her signature in this situation makes the team go to like 105% DPS. This is already the best team in the game for the ToA. And you're making the best team in the game slightly better at the cost of a limited character with their signature. Because you need both of those for her to be slightly better than Arrow Rover. And if you only have one, let's just say the character, she's actually worse than Arrow Rover with their signature. It's a bit of a situation. And that's only with her signature as well, once again. And she's a damage loss without it, unless Havoc Bane specifically is favored with the current endgame buffs. And that's another part of the situation, is that some people might tab their Chisa ready to go. They might see her like in the ToA, specifically on floors 3 and 4, and they might think that she's like a really strong unit on a bunch of teams, because the current ToA floors 3 and 4 have these shield debuffs. All enemies just take 10% less damage unless they have a negative status on them. Chisa has permanent Havoc Bane, 100%. And then Resonators, their negative status damage dealt is amplified by 30%, and when enemies are affected by Havoc Bane, their damage taken is additionally amplified by 30% as well. So she makes these teams look way better than they actually are, because she's basically going ahead and giving 30% damage amp on all the damage the enemies are taking in the current reset. And so that is a bit of an issue. When that buff is gone, you're going to be like, oh wow, this character is some doggy doo-doo water. And I'm going to be real over here. The absurdly shilly nature of this buff makes a lot of sense when you see how badly Chisa teams perform. I can't even blame... I can't even find that many issues or that many problems with this buff being so strong when you know how weak the Chisa character actually is, because she doesn't have any teams. And yes, in this current lineup, she will outperform Arrow Rover because of this amp that's happening, but take this out, and I think she's actually significantly worse than him without having the SIG, once again. We advise carefully considering before deciding whether or not to get Chisa as a result. But in any case, she is the best support for the best ToA team in the game, which of course is bound to warrant good placements no matter what. But do recognize, it's like 5% better than a free unit. She works with no other teams in the game, and she's literally worse than Verena, worse than Shorekeeper, and worse than other free units if you're not going to use her with her SIG on one team in the game. That's just what it is. And that's why I'm not going to say she's a must-pull unit for now. But in the future, once again, because they're building out more negative status teams, that should be something that gets looked at. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at G-Jaw. She's moved, and she's moved down, and I think that's fair. While negative status as an archetype got a new support to work with in the form of Chisa, Jeja, on her end, has gotten no new teams to speak of since Carlotta's release. Yes, she has currently 2 teams in the game. The DPS roster has gotten stronger since 2.0 as time has gone on, but Jeja works with none of them. This made her value gradually drop to the point where she now belongs more in T1 than being worthy of the Apex character bracket. Yes, her team with Carlotta is really good, but that's basically it. She's like a one-trick pony, but that one-trick pony is a really strong pony. So I think that's one of the main reasons why she isn't dropping down further, because the one team that she's really good in is a really fucking good team. Jeja Carlotta is still one of the strongest duos that I think exists in the game, but Jeja really feels like she wants Carlotta to get the job done. And while Jeja Jinxie still clears most of the content except WhiWa, that's still only 2 teams for a character. And then I'm not going to go ahead and say that Jeja Jancy, G-Jaw Jancy, is like the craziest team ever. It's falling off a little bit, and that's probably due to the fact that both characters have dog shit Sonata sets that they're still struggling with. Now, let's go ahead and, with this review, just do a quick glance over at the tier list, because you probably want to know who else is in tier 1. Where could Chisa have potentially fallen if her character was a little bit worse? Let's just go ahead and see. So, just as a quick review of tier 0, we're going to have Augusta, Kartithia, Galbrena, Frolova as the DPSs. I think this is a bit of a fair breakdown, but I'm just going to be honest over here. Maybe I'm somebody that's just like a Galbrena certified hater, but I kind of do feel like she isn't like really tier 1 or tier 0 level. I feel like Galbrena is more like a tier 0.5 for me. That's just my honest take. Some people might disagree with that, but I think she's actually here. I don't think she's at the level of these other characters, specifically due to her very odd reliance on Echo skill and the rareness of that stat. I think she naturally has a lower ceiling than a lot of other characters because she can't get Echo skill damage as like a role, and it just, to me, her design feels like there are like some built-in limitations towards it. On the other hand, Frolova, Kartithia, Augusta, those units just feel very consistent to me. Augusta being the most consistent of them all, with the easiest to build teams. Kartithia with the highest damage, but kind of more annoying teams. And then Furlova just works with some of them. Furlova has some of the most varied and like malleable and like varied team comps in the game. And I think that alone combined with her strength is a strong reason to be tier 0. I don't even think Galbrina's damage is that amazing. I don't think her teams are that flexible. And I don't think that she has a lot of like she just has a lot of things that don't make her qualify for this tier 0 compared to the other units that are here. I don't think she has the strong advantages that they necessarily bring to the table. And I think it warrants a tier 0.5. When it comes to the sub DPSs, let's take a look. We've got Chikona, Yuno, Lupa, and Chu Yan. Okay, so Chu Yan, in my opinion, because he only works with 2 characters in the game, could actually warrant him being closer to tier 0.5. I do think he lacks like a good bit of flexibility because he literally can only work with echo skill damage dealers, and there are only 2 of them in the game. And even his buffs with Furlova don't feel that amazing, but he does trigger more of her attacks. I don't know. The lack of flexibility to me could be warranting of him being dropped down, but it is what it is. That's just my opinion. Yuno and Chikona both make a ton of sense to me. They're usable in a bunch of different teams. Yuno has usability in Spectral Frazzle lineups. Chikona has a bunch of arrow teams that she can use. And then Lupa is the cornerstone of Mono Fusion, and her buffs for Mono Fusion are absolutely nuts. So fair to me from that perspective. Shorekeeper is also, again, the best multi-rolled support in the game that works on pretty much 90% of teams. So yeah, she's still going to be the staple. Tier 0.5. Like I said, Galbrina should be down here, but Carlotta makes a lot of sense. Her damage is not at, like, the crazy levels of some of the other characters over here, but she's so much more consistent, and you'll basically get identical results if you're using her in any context outside of ridiculous AoE multi-wave content. And she's still, once again, I think the best boss killer in the game. You'll get better times with her and her teams than most of the other teams that you're going to be getting in tier 0 because she can't like miss any of her attacks. Her team like can't really miss anything because it's all ranged. It has CC. It has evasive maneuvers and dodging built into the movesets of the characters, so it's hard to get hit. It's just consistent. Zani, on the other hand, is the exact opposite, where all of the stuff that made Carlotta feel good to play, Zani's team has fucking none of it. Yeah, you've got the team with some of the most clunky animations in the game playing like think about it this way. Zani and Phoebe might literally be the 2 clunkiest characters on the roster, where it's like getting Phoebe's like heavy attacks after her basic attack chain down is like, oh god, I want to die. And then like Phoebe has like long ass animations on like every single attack, and so if you don't dodge cancel everything, she feels like shit to play. It's just like imagine this being the most quality of life rich team that feels super good to use, super easy to use, and super consistent. This team is the exact opposite, where there's so much variance in how well the team does, how long it takes to deal damage, how long you're on field, because there's so much shit that can go wrong in a rotation. It's the exact fucking opposite. So I think it's fair. I think that's why the expert tag is there. I think it makes a ton of sense. And this team does have a higher ceiling, but goddamn, does it suck in the hands of 90% of people. Tier 0.5 was followed up with more Teffy, which is fair because I think heavy attackers have been spammed as of recently, and he's going to benefit as the general heavy attack 4-star buffer. And then you got Brant and Chang Li. I think, I don't. I mean, I'm going to be honest over here. I think Chang Li is all right in this category, but I am still kind of under the impression that, like, Chang Li does feel like she's dragging down Mono Fusion significantly. If you can just put in Galbrina in Mono Fusion and the team does way better. Isn't that just like a fair statement to make that Chang Li's kind of bringing down Mono Fusion if putting Galbrina in, who has Echo skill synergy, makes the team do better? Like, I think that alone is enough to drop her, right? And then you can add an expert tag to her when she's in tier 1. That makes a lot more sense to me. Dropping her down, then adding the expert tag to show that, yes, Chang Li has like... But I think just Chang Li played normally without quick swap, just doing a simple 1-2-3 rotation, which is what's being shown over here, right? Because we have no expert tag. I think that's tier 1 or below at this point. So, yeah, maybe drop her down and then add the expert tag. Brant, though, makes a ton of sense. The character is kind of broken. But this is without signatures, so I think with signatures, he is tier 1. All right, now moving on. We've got tier 0.5. Yep, Arrow Rovers here just because they're free. They're a dog shit unit to play, but they are strong. They are strong. And this also does count them with their signature, by the way. This does count Arrow Rover with their signature because it's free. Then you got Verena down here as well. I think she is still a powerful character. I clear with Verena all the time, but yes, it does feel like Shorekeeper is undeniably better now because crit has become a little bit more important than just raw attack buffs nowadays. All right, going to tier 1. You got Camellia, you got Yuno, you got Jancy, and you got Phoebe. I think that's fair. They're all characters that don't have expert tags, and I'm gonna be honest, I always thought Phoebe main DPS was kind of not really that great, and so I'm glad that it's being reflected now. Second, Jancy has fallen off 100% because she has no fucking good support characters anymore. She needs, basically, the Yuno. She needs the Yuno or the Chu Yan of resonance skill damage, and by that, I mean they need a 50% resonance skill damage amplification outro, and the character needs to have coordinated attacks. And then Jancy is going to be very high tier afterwards. But currently, the best that Jancy gets is like fucking this shit. Let me just show you how bad her outro buffs are in comparison. That's resonance skill damage amplified by 25%. That's all she gets, just 25%. While these other outro skills out here are just 50% to the damage type. She desperately wants 50% resonance skill. And so once that comes out, Jancy's gonna be way better. It's a similar case for Camellia as well. Because guess what, guys? The best buffer that Camellia has is this piece of shit. Rosia is so fucking bad, it's unbelievable. And so, the alternative that would have made Camellia way better is again, a 50% basic attack damage amp. And then the character just isn't dog shit like Rosia. They're just not a piece of garbage like this character because she's so bad, it's unbelievable. Yeah, this is literally right here the worst value unit in the game because she's outperformed by Sanhua because of how bad she is at this point. So yeah, these two characters, 1.0 units that haven't really gotten they've gotten no new teammates and they've gotten no new Sonata sets. I'm not really too surprised that they're falling off because literally the other characters just have objectively better things. Objectively better tools, teammates, echo sets, weapons to use. These guys have just got nothing for like over a year. Similarly, there is a character that has gotten stuff over the course of the year. And that's why Jian is actually, when played high level, has the strength of a tier 0.5 unit. That's essentially what it looks like when a 1.x unit gets new tools, gets stuff that can be used. And while he is like a subsidiary recipient of Augustus tools via like Yuno, and a subsidiary recipient of Cartithia's tools with Chakota, you combine all of those subsidiary tools together, and then bro just can now clear all the content in the game with absolute ease, much like the newer units that you're seeing over here. So yeah, that's kind of just an explanation of the placements. When the characters have shit that they can use, they'll go higher. It's just a lot of characters that are older don't have shit to use. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the meta sub DPSs. We got Cantarella down here in S0, R0, and tier 1. I think that Cantarellas exist. I'm gonna be honest. There's Cantarella hate on this website. I've actually talked with the person that curates this. I think they just don't like the character, because if Chu Yan is going to be fucking tier 0, I don't see how Cantarella is this low. Cantarella at minimum at tier 0.5 Cantarella should at minimum be at tier 0.5 because she's Frolova's best partner. And Frolova is just such a very strong character. And so it's just like, I feel like that existence alone should be enough, but maybe they're using like the G-Jaw logic, but Cantarella heals. So it's like, she combines the healing piece and then allows like the second slot to be more damaging on the team when you're using Frolova. So it's like, that's like an additional bit of variance that gives her like a bit of extra strength. I think she's tier 0.5 without her sig. Phoebe, on the other hand, good lord, good. She should be in tier 1. You know why? Because she literally cannot be used in any other context. And all she does is just give Zani a regular outro skill, essentially. She just gives Zani regular buffs. Because Zani, without the confession mode Phoebe, oh god. Yeah, she basically turns Zani into a usable character. But that's the only role she does, because she does no damage. She does no utility effectively. And it's just, brother, the character is just in confession mode. One of the worst things to play in the game, because it feels like nothing you do matters. You're just bringing up the little helical ember count and then getting the fuck off the unit. Sanhua. I think it's fair that Sanhua dropped down because there's not really a lot of basic attackers in the game anymore. Yeah, it's kind of like Camellia. That's the most recent basic attack focus limited DPS was actually Camellia, which is nuts when you think about it. So it's not surprising at all that Sanhua dropped down. Jeja, on the other hand, they gave the same reasoning as before. She only works on like 1 or 2 fucking teams. And like on Jinxi's team, she's not even that amazing. So yeah, it's a bit rough. And then we got Chisa. Yep, this is where Chisa's placed, ladies and gentlemen. Their current competition is Spectro Rover. And it's not really too surprising at all to me that Chisa's so down here. Because once again, she only works on 1 team in the game, and she's a downgrade compared to free-to-play or very accessible options otherwise. So, yeah, honestly, her being up this high is kind of like a bit of a privilege for her. Because if she did not work on the Kartithia team, brother, I'm telling you, she'd be like down here. I think she low-key could be worse than Baija in the general team. I do want to see. I actually want to do a bit of a comparison. Is Chisa literally worse than Baija for the average team? Who knows? That'll be something that we find out later. But anyways, makes sense that she's here. And then Spectre Rover is just like in the sustain category, they're a bit of a fucking meme. But they do work on the Zani Phoebe team if you're willing to do some sweaty shit with it. And then in tier 1.5, Encore, Havoc Rover. And then the 2 worst limited characters in the game, Rosia and Yinlin. Nice tier 1.5 characters. They're fucking bad. Then you got Baija. And then for the niche down here, we've got S0, R0, Brant main DPS. Don't worry, it's a lot better with this SIG. And then basically the rest of the jobbers over here. Yeah, we don't need to talk too much about these guys. I actually got the privilege of playing Lumi the other day. She's the worst character I've ever seen. So, yeah. That's what the ToA Changelog is looking like. Now let's just check it out with SIGs real fast. You can see that Brant pops up over here. He's now tier 1. Overall placements, Cantarella bumps up as well. So does Chisa. So she's now in like the tier 0.5 because with her SIG, once again, she is better than Arrow Rover in 1 team. And the rest of the placements just kind of like are as follows. Rosia gets bumped up, I guess, a bit because her damage with her SIG is like all right, but Yinlin is still dog shit. And then Brant bumps up as well. But it does, the rest of the situations over here aren't really getting helped that much. It's just kind of like the same list regardless. Now, let's go ahead. We've taken a look at the ToA Changelog. We've taken a look at with SIGs and without SIGs. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the WhiWa Changelogs. Alrighty, here we go. Whimpering Waves changes. Chisa, added as a tier 2. That's bad. With no signature and a tier 1.5 with signature with the Kartithia partner tag. That's rough. Chisa is straight up worse than Arrow Rover without her signature and is questionably better than them even with it in Whimpering Waves due to relying on negative statuses in order to apply the defense shred in the form of Havoc Bane, which is a big part of her team contribution. While her grouping capabilities are nice, crowd control is nothing that Chakona and Kartithia can't cover by themselves because yes guys, Chakona and Kartithia have a lot of built-in CC. The problem with Chakona, Kartithia, and Whimpering Waves is not the fact that these characters are lacking CC, it's the fact that they gotta build up their stacks of damage on the enemies and then detonate them. And when it's in multi-wave content and you don't get the time to build up any stacks, guess what? You're dealing damage with this team to enemies that have 1 tick of erosion on them and then like 1 tick of Havoc Bane. And you don't get the time to build up those stacks. And so you just don't really end up doing that much damage to them. That's why I've been constantly saying, guys, this unit is just not that good in Whimpering Waves. She's just not that good. And you can get decent scores with her, but you gotta do some giga sweaty shit. Be like micromanaging and like looking at like, okay, how many stacks of erosion do the enemies have? Oh, I gotta make sure I navigate this battlefield correct. It's like, bro, like that's the thing. You can get it done, but nobody wants to do it because playing her in WhiWa is a gigantic fucking pain in the ass. And that's the point. And then this character only works in 1 team. So it's like, you have now multiplied the pain in the ass that this is because now you don't have to look for just erosion stacks. You now gotta look at the Havoc Bane stacks too. So it's like you doubled the headache. You've like doubled the headache on the team. So yeah, I think it's fair that she's rated low because if you just had like Arrow Rover instead, right? You can literally just set it and forget it. It's like, whoa, I did my 2 slashes and then my liberation and then used my skill. Okay, I don't need to worry about this fucking dude anymore. But then with Chisa, it's like, all right, well, now you gotta pay attention. Who the fuck is marked? Who has Havoc Bane on them? It's like an additional headache to playing the team. You don't really want that. So yeah, she does have grouping, which is a nice thing that she provides. But Chakona and Kartithia don't need grouping, especially with Chakona on the team because she's got a fucking suction laser that she shoots from her gun. And as a result, Chisa finds herself in a rather difficult position in WhiWa. She will need a new team to work with in order to stand out. So pray for 3-point eggs because she's not that good in the game mode. She's not that good in the game mode because Kartithia is not that good in the game mode. If Kartithia was better, Chisa would be rated higher. Zhang Liao is getting bumped up. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, looks like Prydwen's been watching my videos and have been seeing me consistently full clear WhiWa with Zhang Liao Yinlin every single reset. Yeah, I have been full clearing with Zhang Liao on Plunderers every single reset. Even on side 1. Even on side 1, without your liberation charged up at the beginning, I've cleared with a 2.5k plus on Zhang Liao. The character actually kind of fucks this game mode. I'm not gonna lie, he kind of does take a shit on it. It's not even hard either. I'm not even like sweating. I'm just doing like regular ass rotations and bro is just obliterating these people with his cubes. It is what it is. Every single reset, I've had no issues with it. Since Burning Waves has been added. So yeah, he's being bumped up in the tier list. Zhang Liao's performance is not worthy of tier 2 because our tier list criteria only consider permanently available tokens, up to purple tokens at most, and he is a fantastic user of the Plunderer Captain Seal token, which deals that AoE electro damage. Yes, I use Plunderers with him and Yinlin all the time, and like, I'm not gonna lie, it feels better than playing some of the other teams, highly rated meta teams in the game. So yeah, being able to make good use of the best purple token as an electro character, because it does electro damage, and that Plunderer's Captain Seal damage gets boosted by your electro damage bonus. And so there's only going to be a couple characters in the game that are regularly equipping electro damage bonuses in their 3 slot. It'll be Yinlin, Zhang Liao, and Augusta. Those are the only ones that are really going to reliably do that. And you have 2 of them on one team with Yinlin and Zhang Liao, your explosions are dealing a good amount of damage. And so he also retains good damage and crowd control of his own, which makes him able to hold his ground in the game mode, warranting a slightly higher placement. I agree with this one. And I'm going to be honest, because with how consistently I've been getting 2.5k clears with Yinlin Zhang Liao, I think he could be bumped up to tier 1 in the future. I'm not going to lie. And bro is so easy to play and so comfy to play getting those scores. I feel like that warrants a bonus of its own. If Carlotta is like the easy mode character, if Carlotta's easy mode for ToA, part of me is saying Zhang Liao feels kind of easy mode for WhiWa. He does. He kind of does. He's not getting, like, the most ball-busting clear times ever, much like how Carlotta isn't getting the fastest clear times ever, but he's getting consistent ones. And you can see it in every single one of my videos on the WhiWa resets. He's consistent every single time. Now, Chakona is getting bumped up, too. Chakona has access to a lot of strong team options in the form of Kartithia, Jian, and even arguably DPS Yuno. Recognize that. Recognize that for a second, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Kartithia Jian is fucking crazy in WhiWa. She retains a good baseline performance in all of those teams without her signature thanks to Static Mist. So we deem her worthy of tier 1 even without her sig. But it's a big team damage increase if you do have it and you're using arrow characters. So yeah, that's the WhiWa Changelog. Now let's just do a quick review of it real fast so we can see who is with Chisa in tier 2. So WhiWa's a bit of a funny game mode because there's only one character that absolutely trivializes it. That is like Frolova, right? She's just so broken in game modes where you ramp up over time because you have to play WhiWa for 2 minutes. And with Aftersound, crit damage scaling up, base damage scaling up too, multiplier scaling up as well, it just makes a lot of sense why she's here. Plus, she has a disgusting amount of AoE. All of her attacks have AoE and some form of CC as well built in. So that's just another bonus that she has over the damage stacking. Shorekeeper's going to be over here too. I'm just going to be honest. I think Verita and Shorekeeper both got to be tier 0 because I have done quite a bit of experimentation. And Verita's strength as a side 1 character, Shorekeeper feels like shit on side 1. I'm just going to be upfront with you, right? We all know how WhiWa works, where there's one side at the top that has no resonance liberation, but you start off with full concerto, right? Concerto energy is restored. Resonance energy is restored. Shorekeeper's so fucking bad on this side, it's unbelievable because all of her buffs are tied to her liberation. Verena, on the other hand, all of Verena's buffs are just tied to her healing a character. And so Verena has full buffed uptime immediately on side 1. Shorekeeper has buff uptime on like in the middle of like the second rotation. And so I just feel like Verena is so much better and has so much more consistent results on side 1 compared to Shorekeeper that they can kind of share the role. Because, yeah, Shorekeeper not having her liberation at the start does feel like a big fucking barrier to her actual efficacy in WhiWa. But on side 2, no problems. Yeah, no, she's undisputed tier 0. All right. But with that, let's go ahead and start taking a look at the rest of the tiers. We then got Augusta and Camellia. Again, okay, I'm just going to be honest over here. I don't really think that Camellia is, like, that good, but I do clear with her into status resistance, so maybe she is good. Augusta, on the other hand, yeah, I'm still going to say that Augusta could probably use an expert tag +1 because you can still grief your liberation with this unit if you don't use it at the right time and you're not, like, micromanaging and then looking at, like, the wave counter in the corner. Your liberation will still hit, like, one unit, and you'll just do all 9 slashes in your big slash against one unit. And so the ability to fuck up that badly, I think warrants some note, some kind of like recognition somewhere in the rankings. That's just my take. And then in tier 0.5, you got Cantarella because she supports Frolova, the entirety of the Mono Fusion team. And then I guess Chu Yan is over here because he supports Frolova. Yeah, no, he ain't here for Galbrina, boys. And then Verena over here, but I said she could be tier 0 for a reason. Now let's take a look at tier 1. You're gonna have Cardathea, Gian, who can be elevated to 0.5, I guess, if you decide to play him. If you do a Changelog cancel, if you're capable of doing a Changelog cancel, I guess Gian is a tier 0.5 character. It's not that hard to do, though. And then Galbrina's gonna be here, and then Zani's gonna be here with the expert tag +1. Because you gotta quick swap like a fucking freak if you want this character to do anything in WhiWa nowadays. For sub DPSs, you're gonna have Chakona over here. Now that I'm looking at the competition, I could see Chakona in tier 0.5. Yuno's going to be over here in tier 1 too, but I don't know. I think Yuno could low-key be in tier 0.5 as well. I don't think that these... honestly, I don't think these characters are this bad. Like, they should be... I feel like they both can go up. But maybe they don't want tier 0.5 to be too saturated. I can see the argument for that as well. Camellia's here because of... or Sano's here because of Camellia, and then we got no supports over here. Tier 1.5. I think Carlotta can definitely still get clears. Ling Yang's over here for some reason, but I guess people are finding success with him. And then you got Phoebe. Just bump Phoebe down. I don't think she does enough damage anymore. I think even with Chakona, she don't do enough damage. I don't know. I think she need to be bumped down. And then Zhang Liao's getting bumped up over here. I'm saying in the future, I think Zhang Liao could actually go up to tier 1 because once again, the clears have been way too consistent for me to complain. On the other side, you're going to have Dan Jin, which I think is because of Frolova, Mortefi because of Augusta, and then you're going to have Phoebe in confession mode for Zani, and then Rosia down here. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Rosia is a tier 1.5 now. Because, yeah, her grouping isn't really that helpful anymore. It's really not. It's kind of dog shit if we're frankly being real. And then you got the 2 versions of Rover on the side. For niche characters, you got Brant main DPS, Yuno main DPS, because Yuno main DPS fucking sucks in WhiWa. And then you got Jancy. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Jancy is just not really that good in Wuthering Waves. Because her damage is way too front-loaded or back-loaded, and it's just really hard to get through the waves properly. However, if you do want to play her, dual DPS is actually probably her best setup, so that's something to keep in mind. Down here, you're going to have Yinlin, and then Jeja. I'm going to be honest. Yinlin with Plunderers, with Zhang Liao, I think it low-key could be tier 1.5. I'm going to be honest. I think it could be tier 1.5 because I've been noticing Yinlin gets a lot of those electro procs as well, and she feels really good with Plunderers too. I've had situations where, because her Concerto and her Forte charge faster in AoE, I'm like triggering it and then like blasting down with Plunderers and then blowing up a whole wave with her, which is like nuts because I don't actually expect her to be that amazing. And then in the supports, wow. Chisa's competing with fucking Baija, boys. That's rough. And then down here, you have all the jobbers who are kind of just not really WhiWa characters anymore. Yeah, I remember when Yang Yang and John Shin used to be decent. Then they, then the Fire Nation attacked. So there's that one. Now let's take a look at it with signatures. Okay, pretty much identical placements across the board. Nothing has changed. Except, no, literally nothing has changed except Rosia being bumped up and then Chisa getting bumped up a little bit, along with Brant. Yeah, I think these ratings are overall fair. I don't think they're anything too crazy. Yeah, it makes sense to me. I do think that Chakona and Yuno can probably be bumped up once again to tier 0.5, but I think that they don't want the category to be oversaturated. But, yeah, the rest of the stuff does make sense to me. Yeah, nothing too crazy over here. Seems fair, but damn, this unit, she's looking a bit rough. I'm gonna be real. For a release, like, support generalist character, that is a bit rough. That does That does make you want to say a couple of things. All right. The last thing that I want to cover today is, of course, going to be the Chisa review on the Prydwen website, because I heard this one is kind of interesting. I heard this one is kind of funny. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at the pros, cons, and give our takes on what Prydwen's interpretation of this Chisa unit is. Pros is the best support for the current best Tower of Adversity team in the game. That deserves a big asterisk, but sure. He's talking about Kartithia. Has grouping, healing, and shielding capabilities, greatly facilitating her use, particularly since Kartithia, her best teammate, consumes her own HP. True, I guess having a shield when you consume your HP is kind of nice. And provides a very unique form of damage increase via defense shred and defense ignore, which works well for all damage types in the game. Great! Those sound like some strong characteristics. Now, what is holding her back? Is in a Rosia situation where she needs her signature to stand out from a free, easily accessible option in a single team, and even when she has it, the increase is only marginal while lacking team flexibility. Yeah, that's kind of true. Yeah, basically, Rosia existed to replace Sanhua, but Sanhua was already a really good character that felt great to play, and Rosia felt like shit to play. And then the damage increase from putting in Rosia was very marginal compared to just leaving Sanhua. And so Rosia was one of the worst characters in the game. And the funny thing is that Rosia did that in 2 teams. Because she used to be the best in slot for Forlova, and then Chuyan just came in and was like, get the fuck out, you disgusting midget. And then that's like all she wrote. And now Rosia is without a doubt the most useless character I've ever fucking seen. However, Chisa should be the exact opposite from the Rosia situation in that newer team releases, she shouldn't really be that replaceable, right? That's kind of the difference, is that Chisa has a reason to get better. Rosia released, and the only buff that she had was to basic attack and havoc damage. And that made it so that she only reliably buffs Camellia and Cantarella. That's it. That's where her ceiling is. Chisa buffs every negative status in the game. And so I think a lot of people have taken this whole Rosia situation thing and interpreted it in the wrong way. I saw this retarded message regarding Chisa yesterday where someone was like, yeah, so Chisa's exactly like Rosia because in the future, there's going to be a specialized support for every negative status. And that means that Chisa's going to end up being replaced. This bro was basically saying there's going to be a Fusion Burst sustain. There's also going to be a Glacio Chafe sustain. And there's going to be an Electro Flare sustain too. And so Chisa's actually just going to get replaced. Yeah, that's why there's a Spectro Frazzle sustain. Oh, wait. Not really. Oh, wait, like, not really. You could say Spectral Rover. Sure. I guess Spectral Rover is technically the Frazzle sustain. But guess what? Okay, if Rover's the sustain for every single negative status, how do you play all of them at once? That means you can only play one negative status team at a time. That's it. Which doesn't make that much fucking sense, does it now? Oh, in the ToA, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I built out 10 negative status teams. In this ToA run, with my 10 energy, I'm only gonna play 1 out of my 10 negative status teams because they all need Rover. No, that's why Chisa exists. It's so that we have a generalist negative status support because Rover can't literally support all of them all at the same time. They can only do one of them at a time. That's the thing holding them back. Next, majority of her buffs exist in the form of negative statuses, which are weak effects in multi-wave content or only function on negative status appliers or damage dealers. This restricts Chisa's use case to negative status teams, and she has no reason to be used outside of them. Yeah, her damage buffs are just worse than Baija, are worse than Verena, and are worse than Shorekeeper if you're not using her in a negative status lineup. And unfortunately, even in some of the existing negative status lineups, she's still worse than them, which is the Spectral Frazzle teams. Her rotation is also really long and doesn't justify her low personal damage. That's a fair thing to say as well. One thing I noticed as I was testing the character is that, wow, she kind of takes a fucking minute to generate a full Bara Concerto. It's a little surprising how long it takes to rotate through her kit, and her motion values are, well, I can just show them to you. Let me just show you some of her motion values. I know this is a level 6 ability, but hopefully you can still kind of see what I'm talking about over here. Yeah, that's a level 6 to level 7. That is a 13.33 times 2. And on her level 8 Forte, let's check this out. 10.68 times 6. That is about 70% on a attack. This is 100% on an attack. That's really low. That is like, that's almost no damage. So that's kind of And then her Sonata set gives her like 20% attack and 30%. You can kind of see what's going on over here. She's not really a character that feels too rewarding from the personal damage perspective, which I think is a fair thing to say. So, yeah, overall, I would say the review over here makes a lot of sense, but I will say this whole Rosia situation thing, they clarified it well, but a lot of individuals are going the extra mile to almost like intentionally misinterpret this statement and are spreading some misinformation as a result. We will see how her position in the meta evolves from here on out, but I think what's clear is that, yes, a lot of people will be very underwhelmed by how strong this unit is, which is a bit unfortunate, but Prydwen's being very honest here. So yeah, that'll be it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you all thought about our breakdown today, and peace out.